me see here. Now that should be working. Now you can hear what I'm saying. All right. So, as I was just saying, actually, I just got a new microphone. So there's a little piece I had to connect on there, which I forgot to do. So, just connected that piece, and so now here's my new little mic. It's on my shirt. Okay, so can everybody hear me okay? All right. All right, this is the last time I'm gonna have some kind of weird audio problems in the beginning. At least it didn't last a half an hour this time. All right, so anyway, let me just repeat everything I said because no one else was hearing it but me. So I'm gonna be working on the right side of the picture this time, doing all the reflections over here. This is the reflection of the sky. And I'm gonna be painting a little bit of this sort of kelp or whatever this weird plant thing is that's on the bottom on the left. And it's gonna be a little less noticeable on the right because there's a reflection which is gonna sort of create this haze here. So, and by the way, everyone, new bonus, noise cancellation. So, I think, oh, wait a minute. I think it was already on that. Okay, so now it should be on. So the air conditioner will be less, you might not hear it at all. Okay, so this is just going to be this bottom little area here, and then I'm going to check if there's anything else I need to do, which I kind of didn't think I was going to need to add. You know, just like once it's all kind of painted in on the bottom right, I'm going to just check if anything looks like it needs to be adjusted. Because you want to always do that while you're painting, since sometimes things seem like they're done, but then you realize you need to go back and work on something that you didn't think you were going to have to adjust anymore. So I'm going to get my paint. So I'm getting my lead white, and so now you can hear me when I come over to my paint because I'm bringing the mic with me. I'm going to get some lead white to use, and I will get my Viridian. It's a green. And some transparent yellow oxide. So these are these two colors I used before when I was doing it the last couple times. Some transparent yellow oxide. I think the gremlins have hidden it from me because I don't see it. Oh, there it is. Okay. I've got a lot of colors. Some people like to work with just a few colors. I have a lot, which normally is a good thing, except for when you're looking for them and you can't see them because they're in a pile. Okay, so I guess I will start with that. I'm not sure if I'm going to need any blue, because of course there's blue in the sky there. So I don't know if I'll need to add that in the reflection or if it'll basically just be green enough that it'll kind of look like the blue. I'll try it out. All right, now I'm going to also get my brush here. I think I'll probably use the same one. Actually, now I'm trying to remember what I used last time. I think I know which one I used. Yeah, I'm going to get the same one I used before. And I might get a bigger brush if it was not so detailed right there, but because there's a lot of little stuff going on, I'm going to be not going to really just kind of do a very big area and sort of leave it. It's going to get added in there with some more details and things. So thanks everybody for joining. Chital and Karen and Brian. Well, it's just getting to be like, was it the Magic Garden? Hi, Summer and Brian and everybody that's come to join me today. Brian, I don't know if you're old enough to remember the Magic Garden. So I'm going to get my palette knife here and looks like I didn't clean my palette knife that well last time. It's got some streaks on it. Sometimes the metal kind of oxidizes if the paint stays on there for too long, and it's like it gets this like tattoo. Doesn't really matter though. It doesn't really affect anything. It just looks different. All right, so I'm gonna get some of my Viridian out here. I'm not really sure where I want to put this. I'm just going to kind of stick it on there because I need to get started already. And I've got a little bit of paint on my thumb here, so like I was saying before, just check when you're getting paint out that you don't get it on your hand, because that's the easiest time for it to spread. Right, so a little transparent yellow oxide. Not sure how much I'm going to really need this. And that's definitely something I needed for the trees and some of the darker green, but this is such a lighter area in the water. Okay, so now let me move this piece here. I don't really need this. I kind of have this just to show where the camera can see up to, so I don't really go outside of that. All right. So the oil paint, well, let's see, I've got lead white. There's two different versions. One has linseed oil and one has walnut. I think I'm gonna get the linseed oil one actually. Linseed oil one is a little bit yellower, but it dries slightly faster than the other one, which has walnut oil. So yeah, I get this one. Brian, it is magical. I'm assuming you're talking about The Secret Garden. Was it The Secret Garden? I know there was a movie called that. It was like a squirrel in a tree. I think it was called like a pink squirrel. I don't know. I saw it when I was like 3. All right, so a sneak peek. All right, so I'm thinking, just kind of like looking at, this is one of those things that there's a lot of different stuff going on here, so trying to mix one color for it is a little, I don't know. It's hard to really mix anything because it's so different. It's almost got like a random pattern, but it's definitely lighter up at the top here, and then it gets darker as it comes down, which is normally what you see for reflections. So, you know, I'm just gonna throw some stuff on there and see what happens. And you know, actually, I guess I will probably need some cadmium. I have a little bit over here. So that's cadmium yellow. I'm thinking I actually may have put these a little too close together already. But whatever, it's fine. This is looking too brown. You know, I'm not sure how much of this transparent yellow oxide I really need. Maybe hardly any. So I'm gonna just get some more of the cadmium yellow, which there's not really a lot of here. And see, this is the paint from last time. It's still totally fine since I covered it up. I'm gonna get a little bit more from over here. Actually, this was from 2 weeks ago. I didn't really use it last time. I uncovered it, but then I just kind of like left it there. Okay, and I think I did maybe put some of it over on the side. So I'm gonna just take a look at this and see what it looks like on here. But everything I'm gonna do, I'm thinking I'm gonna add a little bit of white in there, even on the bottom. So just from the start, it's gonna be kind of less saturated. Of course, it'd be good if I could do this when I already had the main color mixed so that I can kind of put it in there evenly. But not really sure what I need yet. So there's probably going to be a lot of changing around all that stuff that's going on in that corner today. All right, I'm going to just try this. This is a very small amount of paint, so I'm going to just put it on there and see what happens. In summer, I use Rublev paints mostly. I have a lot of other paints from years ago. I don't really use them as much at this point, but oh, I don't like that. Oh, no. Yeah, that looks bad. Okay, so I'm gonna get some Viridian here and just kind of mix it in right on the surface. This is not a canvas, by the way. This is a board. I don't really like painting on canvas so much. You can paint on mountain canvas, but this is just a rigid panel. You can also call it a panel. So that's better. Yeah, I guess that's not too far off from some of the things that I'm seeing in the reference there. So I think I'm going to just take a little bit of this Viridian over here and just mix it in on the palette, because what I put on there originally looked way too warm. I'm just using my brush now because it's such a small amount. It's not that big of a deal. So I'm going to just test it and see. Let me get a little more. Let me see if what I have on the palette now matches what I put on the painting, because what I put on the painting is at least kind of in the right general area. All right, still a little warm. I'm gonna get some more down here. So a lot of the time when I'm mixing, I'll just kind of get a target color like this. Once I figure out what I need, so I don't mix up a whole bunch of paint that you can't use. And once I kind of get something pretty close to that color I need, then I can mix more of it. And okay, I think that's pretty close. All right, so I don't know if I need the yellow, the brownish looking yellow at all. I'm gonna just kind of stick that to the side. I think one of my hairs got in the paint. Just get rid of that. I've seen some people online that actually, I guess only one person, that was painting hair, and she actually took one of her own hairs and put it in the paint and stuck it on the painting and then lifted it off. So that's getting very, very detailed. Sometimes I feel like I paint too detailed and I see that and I go, well, that's another way to do it. All right, so I'm gonna get some more cadmium yellow. This is cadmium yellow light, actually. Cadmium yellow is a different yellow, but they're pretty close. So probably gonna have some oil come out like usual here. I'll just put it over to the side just to start out. There it is. And I actually got a little stirrer to mix up the paint while it's still in the tube a little while ago, which works pretty well. Yeah, there it goes. All right, so I'm gonna just kind of separate the yellow there from the oil. Hi, Melissa. Thanks for joining. And so you can use a paper towel or a piece of paper to absorb the oil if you want to just get rid of it, but I'm going to put it back in the tube because I'm planning to just kind of mix it up. I just haven't really, I should make a note to do that. Haven't had time for it lately. Because if the oil is coming out of the tube, something you want to be careful about is if a lot of oil comes out, you may get to a point sort of towards the end of the tube where it's underbound, which means there's not enough oil. And then it's kind of just basically not the right ratio, and it's a little bit kind of stiff, or even if it feels okay, it might kind of dry in a way that it's, you know, really not that glossy, and which might not be that big of a deal, but just kind of best to try to keep the ratio pretty similar if you can to when you first buy it. So that means you can mix it back in there when some oil comes out. That's the best thing, but you have to be careful. It takes a little while. It's not a fast process. Yeah, I have a tiny little like spoon with a stick on the end of it, so I don't know if anyone cares about that. I could show you if you want. Want to see it? All right, so now I'm going to get more of this yellow here and put it in with the Viridian. It's still not a ton of paint, but we're seeing how much do I actually need because I had way too much of the brown to begin with. This is a very light, kind of sweet green right now. I want to get it a little bit more earthy. Just using up all my Viridian already. So definitely a little different than what we put down before. I mean, I say we, but it's really me. All right, I'm gonna get more Viridian now. And I mean, I have other greens that are kind of similar to the color I'm mixing right here, but this is fine. I already used these colors to begin with, so, you know, for the other parts of the image, so Sometimes it's a little risky in introducing a new color, especially like this late on, because they might not necessarily look like they go together. Even if you kind of mix it to the point where you're like, I think that looks good, you know, might not exactly match the way you want it to. Sometimes it's like kind of a very subtle type of a thing, as far as like whether it's the saturation or if there's just a little bit of a color in there which is not the same as what you need, if it's too earthy or whatever it might be. All right, so I'm going to get a little bit of the brown here, so I do need some of it. I just had too much before. It's taking a long time on this mixing here today, but I think I've almost got it now. And there's another hair. Where did that hair come from? Didn't come from the cats this time. All right, so this is pretty much what I need here, so I'm going to just start getting a little bit more of the paint. Mix it up because I have a little, not a huge area, but a little bit of a larger area compared to some of the other things I was doing before. So this is almost there. All right. It's a little bit of a thunder and rain before. I think it's kind of done now, but all of a sudden I just cut out and the stream ends early. That might be why. Okay. Let me get a little more of the brown now. I mean, it's not really brown. It's transparent yellow oxide. It looks brown though. Okay. Mixing up the color can take a while sometimes. It's one thing with like the foil that can be really nice is you can just cover up, like get your paint out sometimes, and there have been cases where I had something to do where I just, not too often, but I'll like set things up the day before just so that it's like more time I can actually spend on the painting instead of doing what I'm doing now, which sometimes it takes a really long time. So I think I'm gonna get, I'm not sure if this is enough paint. Yeah, I'm gonna just get some of the white in there. And it's really not a lot of paint, but probably enough. And some people could use this much paint in like 1 or 2 strokes, and you'd have to get more. All right, let me just try this. I'm gonna put it on there and start adding more white into it before long here. So, I'm getting a bunch of paint on the bottom of my palette here. So the color I have down already from the base layer, it's, no, Melissa loves transparent yellow oxide also. Melissa Unger is an event painter, and I think she does maybe some other stuff too, but we've been following each other for a while. So if you guys don't know about live event painting, you can go check out her stuff. Melissa Unger Art on Instagram. Hi, Edmundo. So now this is gonna get painted over like I was saying before. I'm gonna put down a bunch of color and then go back over it and kind of do like a push-pull thing. But yeah, I wasn't really using transparent yellow oxide until not that long ago. I think I might have heard Brad Kunkel talking about using it, and I was like, well, maybe I'll try some of that. But yeah, it's really a nice color. It's like very versatile. So I'm kind of looking at where these little plant sort of things are and putting down this color in there first, because there are some other areas where the color's a little bit more like on the left side, where it's like the kind of like lighter green over there. I'm not so sure this is going to take 2 hours to do this part here. So if it doesn't, I don't really know what I'm going to do after that. But then again, it's probably going to take longer than I think, like things usually do. So, Oh, yes, Melissa, I'm not doing live painting anymore. I'm officially retired, and now I'm just like many retired people, still working, but just doing something different. So I'm doing this kind of stuff and figure paintings and other commissions, but just more like traditional portraits and things like that. So just for how long I take to paint normally, the live event paintings, kind of it's just a lot of hours. So kind of, it's not really the greatest thing for me. I've seen some people now, like kind of the younger people or newer people that have started that are really great. They can do things that are very detailed and realistic in much less time than I took to do it. But anyway, so yeah, I'm getting back into my own stuff and doing more personal work, and gonna look for galleries to sell and things like that. Once I have some more work, I need to get more work. I've been doing nothing but commissions for a long time now. Okay, so this now is looking a little bit light, I think, in some areas compared to the plants on the left there. It's supposed to be lighter because it's a reflection, on the right, but oh yeah, Melissa, I always, the majority of the work I did in my live event paintings was really not live. I mean, it was not live at the wedding. It was like 99% done later. I mean, the average used to be 430 hours for me. I changed my options after a while, and that went down to less, but the last one I just finished a little while ago was kind of a large one, and that came out to 650 hours, which is nuts. So kind of went out with a bang. Anyway, I think I'm gonna get a different green now for that other area where there's like the lighter water stuff. I don't know if there's really enough. I guess there's enough white in there because it definitely looks significantly lighter than the right side. So I'm gonna just separate this now and mix up. So that was definitely plenty of paint for what I did so far, but I'm probably gonna need this again to go back in there and touch it up a little bit. So this is going to be a little bit less earthy now, what I'm going to mix up, but I'm going to need to make sure I add in some of that white there so that it has the same kind of look. One of the things I definitely learned with live event painting was, there's a lot of cases where I painted scenes where there was uplighting, pink or amber or different things like that. So something I would do for that, because if that's the only light source, that is your, replacement for white, basically. So in those cases, I started changing the actual, like I wasn't using white to mix in with different things because there was no white, in some cases. So I was mixing, whatever the light source color was, basically, and that was going into all of the colors in the image so that everything actually looks the way it does in real life. Because that's the way light actually works in reality. That one color, if it's yellow, everything is going to be yellowish. If it's whatever the color is, everything will be that way. So that was kind of an interesting thing I kind of got out of just the experience of live painting. And Melissa, no, I'm not kidding. It was, I thought I was almost done at like 330 hours, and because I had written to one of my friends about it, and then I found that later and I was like, yeah, not really. Yeah, I started out much more kind of loose in the beginning, but just the way I really naturally paint. I mean, some of this kind of stuff I paint a little bit looser, but for like a serious, not that Impressionism is not serious or whatever, but like a long-term painting or something that's really got a lot going on, or it's just not plein air. It's just kind of my nature to add details. That's always been something I kind of was into ever since I was little. So even to the point where sometimes I've painted like nail art on the bride's nail, if it was like a couple little stripes and things like that. I mean, you might say it's a little overboard, but people really like that kind of stuff also. All right, so this is pretty close to what we have on the left here. So I'm gonna just, I don't know if I need more, maybe a little bit more. So A little bit more yellow here. Okay. All right. I mean, that's still not a ton, but it's probably fine. So I'm going to add some more white in here. And now I'm kind of just guessing about how much white I need compared to how much I added to the one on the right. Maybe something like this. It's a really small amount. But I'm going to kind of need more as it goes up higher. It's going to it will be becoming lighter as it goes up. So as I hold it on the left side, it's not extremely different, so I want it to be definitely lighter than that, even on the bottom where it's not as noticeable. And on the right side. So, I don't know, it's taking a little bit more than I expected. Lead white is transparent, so it doesn't stand out as much as titanium, but lead white is much more archival, meaning it lasts much longer. It's actually been called the most important color out of all of the pigments as far as just keeping paintings strong over hundreds of years. Ironically, it's about the most toxic out of all of them, but anyway. It's fine to paint with it if you're just careful. I'm going to try, use the same brush here. Just wipe off some of the paint. And then on the paper towel, I'm going to just go in there with this one and see if this is showing up okay. I feel like it needs more white, but I'm just try it and see how it looks. No, well, yeah, I'm going to get a little more white. But first, I'm going to get more water. Melissa, you doing any cool side projects right now, or anything that's just for yourself? That's a lot of white. That might be too much. You get different colors that are more dominant than others when you're working, so sometimes you need much more or less than you think you will based on that specific pigment. Seems to me a lot of the time the transparency has a lot to do with that. So this is probably going to do it for that white. I'll get a little bit more on my brush just to kind of blend into the color that's already on there. So let's see here. All right, I think that's better. So I'm going to go in and just kind of do a little bit more detail maybe now with this lighter color, and kind of feel like I might need more than I have on there, but it's just taking forever to mix this color today. God. Oh wow, Melissa has 76 weddings this year. That's a lot. At most, I could only ever do like 4, or I think there was a time earlier on where I did maybe 6 in a year, but it was when I was working smaller and maybe a little bit looser than my more recent ones. So 76 is more than I've done by far total since I started in like 2013. All right, this is getting a little bit more of that texture now, the plants. It's weird aquatic plants. I saw a little while ago that there's, I think, a few different organisms now that have been discovered that can actually, they live in the ocean and they can incorporate things from plants that, I guess it's chlorophyll that they're getting from plants that will actually use the process of photosynthesis to create energy, and they are able to just get energy then from the chlorophyll, or, you know, I guess it's chlorophyll. I don't think anything else does that. Chlorophyll has got the market cornered in that area. So pretty crazy, because they're kind of plants, but they're kind of animals. I always think when I hear things like that, it's so easy to just not pay attention to how many kind of amazing things there are in the world, and just kind of get used to stuff, or even when there's something interesting like that that you first discover or hear about or whatever. And it's just worth taking a little time to go, wow, that's just like something I can barely even believe is real. Sounds like a little kid made that up. Hey Melissa, thanks for stopping by. Have fun at your wedding. Or it's not your wedding, someone else's wedding. All right, and hi Janet. So I think this is going okay so far. It has the overall, it still has that look of like everything is lighter the way it's supposed to be. So let me just move chat here. Okay. So I'm going to probably have to add more of the darker plant stuff in there in a little bit. I'm going to get, you know what? Well, yeah. I'm going to go in with a little bit more white now. I want to keep the color I have right over here for the sort of non-plant area. And then also get more white for the other parts of the top that are non-plant, but just higher up. This is getting a little complicated, just having two different colors or more that are both getting actually more white. And now that I'm really looking at the reference, I know it's kind of small on the screen for what you're seeing, but I can see a little bit of a blue difference compared to the clouds and down in the water here, but it's just so barely noticeable. I don't think I'm going to really bother with that in the painting. I can't even really see it in the reference. It's probably not anything I need to get too concerned about. Sometimes things can get a little bit too complicated. If you try to do every little thing, it doesn't always necessarily work in the painting. You might be able to get it in there, but it might not really read that way. So I'm gonna go back in on the top now with this lighter, more whitish color. I think I'm going to just actually go for the really light one. Start up at the top and come down. That's a little, well, I'm getting some highlight from my light in the room here. I guess that's right around where it should be. I want to be careful not to go too far up because I don't want to have to repaint all this stuff I did up here if I go past where I really need to. So there's a few little areas where the water's breaking here. I guess this is pretty good. Oh. Here's some thunder. It's coming back. So there's a few little areas here where it's kind of giving me these little wave sort of textures. I mean, they're not really waves, but you know, ripples, or just the wind is moving on the water there. So you don't really see that as much anywhere else because we've got this hard edge right here on the hills going down into the sky, or going up into the sky where the sky's really bright, so it's very defined here. So I think I like how that's looking. Kind of going in the same basic direction for the most part, just from this angle going across like that. So of course, now this is another thing to manage with all the other changes that are happening here with the color shifting. So bring this edge right over here out. Definitely a little far from the rock compared to the reference. I'm going to bring this over now some more because I've got a little area here I didn't paint last time. Actually, you know, I think I actually should have brought this over more. Maybe I just kind of left that part out. I missed it. So there's also, if I look really close in the reference, I can see the blue kind of mountains way off in the background. They're kind of reflecting up here, but you know, again, that's another thing. It's just so subtle. I don't know if I want to really mess with it, so I may just kind of leave that out. I'm going to just put in some of this darker part of the rock over here because it sort of just ends. right on the edge where the water is, which looks like it doesn't really fit everything else going on. So that'll be another part I can work on, I think, once I do all the reflection over here. So I want to make sure that this, so something, here's a fancy art term for today, values. So value just means how light or dark things are, and how they relate together. So I want to make sure the value of this reflection is bright enough that it looks like it's really got that glowing effect that's happening up there in the sky, but it should be much darker than the sky because it's only a reflection. So you never really have, well, you hardly ever have the reflection be as bright as what's happening up above there. Sometimes you might, at certain angles, at certain times of day, depending on the specifics, it might be pretty close or it might look about the same. But I'm just kind of going over the plant green over here, even though we've got this other color on there. It's not really changing it all that much, aside from really just making it lighter, I think. Hi Diane, thanks for joining. So I'm just gonna keep lightening this plant blob over here, break it up a little bit more so it's not kind of this solid shape. I mean, there's kind of something like that happening in the reference. Right now it's kind of making me think of there's another Stephen King reference, one of the stories in the Creepshow movie, where there's this blob that's just floating around killing teenagers in a lake. So there's this little thing right over here that kind of looks like that right now. But I'm gonna just break it up some more so it's not as solid looking, I guess. Those teenagers had no business swimming where they were. There was a sign that clearly said no swimming, so they got what they deserved anyway. No judgment, just saying. You gotta read the signs. So, I think this is still too dark right here. I'm gonna get, you know what, I need some more white. I'm gonna make a little room here because it's getting kind of crowded. I feel like this green down on the palette right now, it's kind of like that Wrigley's chewing gum wrapper color. It's not quite hospital wall green, but it's in the general neighborhood. It's kind of interesting how certain colors look really bad in certain places. I mean, I guess you could say this about any color, but certain colors generally look nice in most places, but then there's certain ones, like I feel like yellow and orange or colors like this, that they look very tacky in some places, but then they look great just in other places. So it really depends on exactly where you're seeing them, and sometimes the type of paint, if it's like glossy or if it's more kind of a matte color, that can affect things. But probably more white than need. That's fine. So we had a color when I was in art school, or sorry, a class when I was in art school, to choose a color and do a monochrome, which is predominantly one color. And if we wanted to, we could pick a color that we hated and see if we could make it look, really nice and actually like the painting. So keep on lightening this area on the top here. So there's something I really like is when there's different areas that kind of have their own sort of local value range, like how light and dark things are, and they all kind of work together just as their own little thing, and it's separate to one or two other places which are different values. I feel like it looks really sophisticated when you get things like that, and looks very much like, more like real life. Those little nuance things, those little like subtle changes tend to be some of the best stuff when you're painting. You don't really notice them as much when you first start out, but start just kind of picking up on them more as you go. Okay, so it's getting a little bit tricky here with having this plant thing kind of breaking up, but also having the right amount of light showing through here. So, I don't know. Might want to go back in and adjust some of that with the sort of the saturation of the green a little bit. And I'm looking at where this edge on the left is also for the white. So it needs to be sort of hard enough that it's not blending with this area I did already too much. At the same time, I want to keep this shape of the mountain that's above still reflecting in that same type of shape. So if I don't really pay attention to what's happening up here enough, then it just might be too flat or too vertical or something. But there's a little bit of distortion happening just with the reflection where the water's moving around a little bit, so it's not exactly the same as the mountain. So it's just right around here. I like how this one area came out last time. I don't think I need to paint over it. I would be really distraught if I had to. It'd be one of those places that would be like really trying to avoid going over if it was looking like I needed to. Okay. So now I need to try to keep the angle the same for these waves also. I think it's maybe a little bit too kind of diagonal right here, so it can kind of change, but you tend to see them looking pretty much almost the same angle a lot of the time. If anything, they're going to get more horizontal as it goes up towards the horizon, which is not different than what I have happening here, but just making an adjustment on it. So something like this, just on its own, might almost look like an abstract painting if you couldn't see everything else going on. But when you stand back and look at it in context to the rest of the scene, the plan at least, is that it looks like what it's supposed to look like. It actually seems like it's a real area with water and reflections and all that. Weird lake plants. So I'm seeing there's some places in here that are the white is standing out a little bit more, just like you have some places up here where the white is brighter. I'm not sure how much I want to really kind of play around with that, because it might end up just looking kind of uneven or almost like I made a mistake or something. Well, I'm doing this for an hour already. Seemed to go by pretty quick. Just speaking for myself. You might be thinking something different. All right, so So from back here, I think I've got a little bit more of the plants down here than I really want. So I'm gonna just switch over to the other green instead of the white. Wipe off my brush here on the palette a little bit. Get rid of that Wrigley's and go back to the green to sort of get rid of some of the stuff right on the bottom there. So just using the side of the brush now that's not as wide for this really little sort of more detailed plant stuff that's going on over here. Because I want to also make sure that aside from the color and how light it's supposed to be on the right, the texture and the size of the little bits of things showing through on the left needs to match also. Because if it's just a lot of detail over on the left and then these big blob things on the right, that's not going to look good either. Unless you just had the misfortune of a photographer taking a picture of an area where there's just big blobs on the right, and that's how it looked in the photo. But things in the photo don't always translate well. So I'm kind of just looking now around to places that are too large, these kind of plant sort of shapes that are happening. I always tell people there's in nature often this kind of controlled randomness that's happening, where if things are too perfectly natural or too perfectly random, they might not be believable. When things are actually random, they're not totally even. That's another thing. It's just like in general, like if you think of like radio or I think more TV static in the old days before you couldn't see that anymore. It's just like a perfectly even amount of black and white dots that were just swirling around. So in reality, things in nature would tend to have more like clumps of light or dark areas usually to make it look more real. I think this is working out all right. You know what? Something I was doing actually I didn't really think about. I was kind of going in the same angle with these little detailed parts for the plant area as the waves, which I guess I could kind of actually hint at the waves since you can see them somewhat over here. So I was going to say maybe I shouldn't do that, but now that I'm thinking about it, maybe it's fine. No. Sure. Okay, so just kind of looking around to see what stands out to me that needs to get broken up a little bit more. I'm running low on the screen. I don't think I need too much more though. Okay, I think I'm going to go back in now with the white and touch up. I feel like the edge over here is looking pretty good as far as how light it needs to be. Maybe go a little bit lighter, but I'm going to want to go back in some of the other parts to just lighten that also. So I was going to go over this part right here just now, but I'm going to leave that just since it's kind of an extra large area that is different from the other stuff that's happening. Alright, get some more white. Put the green together here. go over this darker area a little bit. I need to just go over it enough that it adds more of the white, but it still looks darker than the other green. Just need just a little bit in there. A little bit dark over here. So I have this lighter edge on the left that it kind of looks like it's just outlined too much, but that's kind of how it is in the reference. So just looking at a way I can kind of make that not look as much like I just went too heavy on the white right there. Let me just go a little bit lighter over here and see how that looks. This is getting a little tricky. The kind of ombre effect. Yeah, Summer, this is a little like hospital scrubs green. Actually had one of my color teachers in college was saying, you know, when doctors and nurses are working on somebody, they typically wear that specific color green. Does anybody know why that is? You know, the scrubs aren't always that color green now, but you know, surgeons and things, I think they still often will wear that color green. Anybody know why? There's a specific reason. Some of the stuff I'm doing here might be easier actually if I was to do part of this and then go back over it when it's dry and kind of glaze it or do a very thin layer. But I'm definitely not planning on doing that. So it's definitely getting tricky keeping the details I did from kind of disappearing with all the other stuff I'm adding for the white. So in summer, actually, that specific color of green is the opposite of blood. So when surgeons are looking down into a person, there's blood all over the place and they're working on them, it's less disorienting when they look up. That color green helps to kind of clear out the eyes from the red that's in there and help them to see more clearly. Why you need to paint the walls that color? I don't know. I don't know, maybe newer hospitals don't have that color, but I feel like it does not look very good a lot of the time. Maybe it's just so that it looks the same as what the nurses are wearing, so it seems like they're coordinated. I don't know. I feel like I'm not getting enough of the fade of the white from the top to the bottom right now. Maybe I need to add a little more white up here, or maybe there's too much over this way. I don't know. Things not quite where it needs to be yet. I think actually I'm gonna add some more white to the darker color here. So I'm just trying to change this just the slightest amount here by adding the white in. I feel like there's a little too much over here, so I'm going to just kind of borrow it from that spot and spread it around. Sometimes I have to just go in a certain direction just so that the light that's up above is not going to reflect and make it hard to see what colors I'm actually looking at. So I think that's looking better. It's getting more of the effect that I need here. Got to be careful not to overdo it though on the bottom. Cover up the places that need to be a little bit darker though, so it's got to stop in the right area for that to still happen. So what's going on with the clouds there is just the brighter it is above the water, the more it's going to show up down here. But then there's some areas that, kind of like the hills a little bit more, they don't really reflect very much at all because the water is bright enough that you can see through it. But if this was at night and well, if it was at night, then the sky wouldn't be lit up. But if this was at night and somehow there was just a really big glowing thing up there and the water wasn't, visible at all through what's happening underneath, then you'd have a much more distinct reflection happening. So it's all about sort of which kind of element is brighter. Things only show up so much depending on what's around it, or if it's transparent like this, like the water, what's underneath. So I think this is getting pretty close to where I need it to be. I'm going to go over this a little bit more right up at the top here. This is really very subtle stuff, just the changes I'm making. I think I want to go over, have a little kind of a ripple that's over this way. I just go over it a little bit more so that it stands out enough and looks like it's supposed to have this hard edge. Like some of the little spaces right here between some of the lines are maybe a little bit wider than they should be. So I don't really want to go over them all the way, but I think it's just, for the perspective, it's looking too big compared to the other things that are happening. So when I was doing that, I maybe should have made them a little bit tighter together. So I got to go over it now and just try to give it more of that look like it's further away. Okay, so let me just stand up here and look at this. Okay, overall it seems pretty good from far away, but I still need to do something about the edge here just being too outlined. Like it just is going around the whole plant area too much, and it needs to get kind of incorporated more. So I'm gonna come back in here. I need a little bridge right here. It's getting the right amount of green versus white here, just messing around with the two different kind of greens that I've got put down first. It'll become less kind of obvious sometimes if it's not exactly the right amount, but let's see how it goes and adjust it. If I need to add more of the sort of saturated green, I can always just add more in. Probably not a big deal though. I'm seeing there's just an area right here on the reference that's more white happening, so I'm going to just put that in a little bit more broadly. So just kind of covering up some of what I did already, but it's just lighter right there, a slightly larger kind of area. I also don't want to have some of these things show up too much with a hard edge where I'm painting this lighter area in right here. I don't want it to stand out too much because definitely this lighter edge around the whole kind of reflection needs to stand out more. I don't really see anything all outlined all that much in the reference. I'm going to bring down some of the more of the white over here also. And I think I'm going to maybe add just a little bit more at the top to make it kind of glow more than what I have right now. And the value is pretty close to where it needs to be, but I feel like it just needs a little push. Just like a baby bird going off the branch into the world of flying. Yeah, I like that better. So that's a very subtle change, but I think that's enough. Go over this a little bit more right here too. It might be too much. I did it now. Yeah, it's fine. kind of blurring the edge of this lighter area right here a little bit more. Just like I was saying before, to get a little bit more, less distinct. I think actually, well, maybe I want some more of the lighter green over here, so I'm going to just switch over to that. I don't know if that's really working. So I'm trying to just kind of put this white on here and not have it blend too much with what's underneath, because then it doesn't really show up as well. So I need to just put it on just light enough that it's sort of sitting on the top on the painting. You need to make sure this part on the top is not too irregular as far as how bright certain things are. Otherwise it might just look kind of weird. Oh, hi Maite. How'd that portrait go? Thanks for joining. Maite is an artist. She was working on a drawing of a nun the other day, and she was liking how it was coming out, but she was very concerned that she was going to ruin it. She added that ink in there. So, I feel like this is still too dark right over here. I'm just go in and lighten it a little more. Okay, so we're still working on that portrait then. That's good. And, you know, if you try out the inking and it doesn't go so well, you could always just draw it again and then do things a little different for the inking. Of course, if you're not sure, you can always sort of trace what you did and just do a quick version of the ink and then do it on the actual one. I used to trace things back when I was in high school. Sometimes if I drew something I liked and I wanted to give somebody a copy of it, which was really an original, I just trace it and sometimes give it to them if it wasn't too complicated. My dad had this old record player that he turned into a light box, and the light got so hot on it that I used to burn my hand when I was tracing, just right at the edge of my pinky on the joint. I had this just permanent burn right there where it was smooth. Eventually it went away, but it was there for a long time. And I just keep on drawing on it even though it got really hot. Okay, I feel like there's not too much left to do here, but I'm still not really, still gotta tweak it a little bit. Glad you are liking it, Maite. So I first started this painting, I don't know, I think before COVID. It's been a while. I'm just kind of hanging out, and I was so busy with the live event paintings that I was talking about before. I just had to work on them, and as soon as I finished one, move on to the next one, and it was not time for a whole lot else. But now I'm getting back into doing my own paintings and still doing commissions, but doing this stuff too. And so I started painting, well, with oils, I guess back, well, all right, the first time I ever painted with oils was in a thing called the Children's Art Workshop after school in like 7th or 8th grade, and there was a woman named Susan Volpe who was the teacher there, and so it's like a thing where you could go on Saturdays or whenever it was, and she kind of gave me some oils to just kind of do my thing, and I was painting this night scene in a desert that I made up, and I had some water there, and I mixed some water into the paint, and it was all beating up, and I was like, there's something wrong with this paint, it doesn't work right. And so I didn't know you couldn't put water in it, because I'd done things with tempera before. You know, I might have used acrylics at that point, probably not. But I'd used, I don't know, maybe, I guess watercolor a little bit. But I never did anything oil-based at that point. So anyway, did that painting then. Didn't really do too much with it until maybe my junior year or senior year in high school. I had a really good art program there. And there was this like press that was in the art room, so I painted that, which was also blue. The first one was blue, and then the second one was blue. I don't know. That was my my blue period, I guess you could say. And then I studied when I went to art school, and was planning to be an illustrator and do book covers, but I ended up deciding I didn't really want to do that. And oh, thanks, Live Like You Mean It. So I didn't really know what to do with myself after I got out of art school for a while there, because I wanted to do realism, but it seemed like realism was just on life support at that point. This is 2000, but it definitely seems to have made a comeback. It's just kind of steadily growing little by little. So I feel like things are much different now than they were back then, and people are kind of getting into it a lot more. For a long time, a lot of people just looked at realism as kind of this thing that it's all that you can do, like everything has been done that you could do with it, but I think that's a ridiculous way to look at it. If you like abstract painting, that's fine, but there's always going to be, you know, new things that you could do with realism. And I think a lot of people right now are doing some really cool things, you know, painting in traditional style technically, but like still painting things that are current. So, I mean, this is a very traditional kind of landscape here, so this is not really what I'm talking about with that, but there's plenty of really great artists now, like just a ton. I'm just getting that paint back in there by tapping it. Really a ton of people now that are just doing great work, and you can really see on social media more than you could a long time ago. It's like you don't know who else is out there aside from what you see in magazines, you know, 25 years ago. So my favorite realistic painter is, well, it's a tied place for four. I was just telling Maite this the other day. So my four favorite painters are Jeremy Lipking, Brad Kunkel, Adrian Stein, and Jeremy Mann. So all of them have reached master level, in my opinion. I think that when you get to a point where things kind of crystallize and you're not just kind of painting and winging it, you know, there comes a point where something changes and you sort of come into your own and things really just solidify in a different way. So I think they've all done that. Doesn't mean everything you do is always going to be perfect, but it's kind of just working at a different level compared to most people. There's not really too many people at the master level at most things. You know, now I'm thinking I might need a little more weight up here. I don't know. back up here. Yeah, I'm feeling like it still needs to be lighter at the top. Maybe it's just those little swampy guys, little weed things. And comparing it, like how much texture or whatever detail is going on over here. And in the photo, actually, there's a lot more little bits of things on the right. Like these, they're kind of bigger clumps on the left in the actual reference. There's one big clump over here, which maybe I could group together a little bit more, but I feel like that is maybe a little bit of a difference that I want to adjust also. So I just lighten some of this stuff up here and then break that up on the bottom some more. Well, that's the wrong word. Clump it together. I need more clumps. Just like with the cat box. Clumping is good sometimes. You don't have clumps. Make things a lot harder. Maite, sometimes it's very hard to know when to stop. A lot of people have a hard time with that. For me, I usually stop when it doesn't look like there's anything wrong anymore. It's like the entire time it's like I'm just jumping from one thing to the next that doesn't look good. And when I get to a point where I don't feel like anything is making me ill that I'm looking at, then I'm like, okay, maybe that's it. But there have been times where I went too far with things, and then I look at it later and I go, dagnabbit, that was better before I added that stupid thing right in the middle. But depending on the medium, if it's oils, you can always get rid of it. You can even just wipe it off sometimes, or paint over it or whatever. If you're doing pen, different story. But that can be a tricky thing. I feel like you kind of get more of a sense of that when you're more experienced. You just kind of get to a point where you can tell, like, all right, like, I mean, it might even just be you get to the point where you're just sick of it and you're like, ugh, that's enough. I've had it. Some people might get kind of sick of what they're working on because they spend so much time on it. Might not even really like it for a while, but then after, you know, a few months or something, they might look at it again and go, oh, actually I like it again now. That definitely happens. Just like a lot of the time people do things, if you're, you know, less experienced, you might think you're doing a bad job with something, and, you know, after you finish it, you might not like it, but then just leave it there for a while, like a year, and look at it again later and probably like it more than you did, you know, to begin with, if you weren't really feeling it so much. Got my white in a kind of annoying place over here. I'm gonna just move it. Don't give me an attitude, white. You're gonna stay where I put you. Alright, so I think that's looking better with the fading from the top going down. Maybe a little more right here. A little bit too much white on there. Yeah, okay. So try not to overdo it so that it just looks too light right here, because I want it to still have that darker look. So this is getting really specific now as far as how dark this, like there's not a big jump between these two little parts right here, but if I go just a little bit too light on the one on the top, then it's going to look like it's just kind of blending in. So I need it to still have that differentiation, but be in the same range of where I want things to go from the top down, where it's still fading at the same rate from lighter down to kind of more clear on the bottom. I feel like I want to lighten this right here a little bit. I'm just going to tap it. tap, tap, tap it away. I don't even know what I was quoting just now. Tap, tap, tappity. I feel like it might have been Jim Carrey, but probably not. So Jim Carrey was saying recently, he doesn't really feel the need to do movies anymore. You know, he's into painting. He's been really into it for several years now. He's like really all about it. Lots of celebrities that are painting. Brad Pitt paints. Jeff Bridges sculpts. I think he might also paint. Sylvester Stallone. I know two people personally that have taught Michelle Pfeiffer. It's pretty cool. And I'm not sure if Nicolas Cage might do it. There's a lot of them. Who else? Who do you guys know that is famous, that likes to paint, but they're not famous for painting? I feel like Michelle Pfeiffer's kind of making a comeback now. She was kind of not really into much for a long time, but I always liked her. I saw her in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. It was nuts. Really good though. So summer, I'm not sure what I'm painting next week. I was just thinking about that before. I have a few things I've started. You know, I'm gonna add more white on the bottom here. I'm feeling like it's a little bit... Gotta be careful not to add too much white so it doesn't look like it's got that fading effect happening. But does seem like it needs more white. You know what I'm going to do first? Actually, I'm going to just go over the darker part a little bit more. Kind of like the weed plant color. I'm going to do that and then add some white. So, let's grab some of this over here. So anyway, for next week, yeah, I'm not sure what I'm doing. Kind of too bad. I sort of like some of the brush strokes going on there. See, I like it. That means I probably am going to have to cover it. If it's something that stands out, like, oh, I really like those brush strokes. It's almost like a jinx that, yeah, I'm going to have to get rid of that. I mean, I could leave it, but it's fine. It's what the painting needs. You got to just do it. Do you guys have any specific things you'd like to see me paint? You might have something you want to see me do that I was already thinking about. Thinking I could possibly paint one of the cats, or maybe another landscape, possibly a person, you know, a portrait or something. I'm looking at the overall dark and light area over here. Definitely not going to be painting this because it's almost done. No. Maybe Clouds, Facebook user. That's a catchy name. We have a lot of cats. I literally lose count sometimes and have to like count them again. But we brought in... all of our cats are rescues, and we had some cats. We were putting out a little food bowl outside to feed another cat because we saw this cat hanging around the neighborhood. This little gray cat was coming over just munching away at the food. Munch, munch, munch. And then we just saw one day he had this big gash on his arm, and Oh, hi Carol. I don't know why it says Facebook user. Yeah, I started working on this painting with Carol, who's on the call right now, years ago. Just saying before, that was before COVID. Oh, glad you could join. So, yeah, it only took like 4 years for me to finish it. So, yeah, the gray cat was hanging out, eating the food we were putting out. We saw there was this big gash on his leg. After a while, I was like, you know, we got to get that cat. He's gonna totally die if we don't, you know, get him to a vet, because it was really bad. It was like 6 or 7 inches long. Definitely gonna get infected. And oh, good. Carol's working on her painting now. We're painting together here again. It's like that song, Reunited. I'm not gonna sing it. So we put out a trap. We caught the cat. We got the gray cat in the cage. Brought him to a vet. Had his bits taken care of and got him neutered and everything. But you know, the wound had all healed. I was like, oh wow, okay, well that's good. And I thought he looked a little different when he was in the cage and we were there at the vet, but I thought his face looked a little different. But I was like, okay, well, I've only seen him from far away in our window, you know, on the second story. Had the cat inside. He was a very nice cat. And then a couple weeks later, we looked outside and there's a gray cat with a big gash on his arm. So we didn't get the cat that we were feeding originally. This was an imposter cat that came in. So we're like, we gotta still catch him now. He's still out there. So then we had to catch him. And long story short, there's like 6 cats that we caught. We were gonna socialize them, get them ready to go into living with people in their homes and inside where they're safe. But eventually we had them so long that we just decided we're just gonna have to keep them all, because they all knew each other, which we didn't realize at first because they were in cages. Before we let them out to be around each other, we could tell by their reactions that they knew each other, and they were all just in a cat colony outside. And so we're like, well, I feel like we'd feel guilty, you know, breaking them up and not allowing them to be around each other anymore. So it was definitely not the plan, but that's what we're doing. We still have all these cats here. They mostly get along really well though, so that's nice, because we have had times in the past where we only had like 3 or 4 cats, and you know, 2 of them were just fighting all the time and not getting along, which is not fun. A little bit of hissing going on still, not too much. So I'm gonna make sure this bottom part is still dark enough. I feel like the part on the right is matching the part on the left a little bit more now as far as how big that clump of plant stuff is. I'm gonna back up and look at it. Feeling like this little, from farther away, this little area right here of the lighter stuff is maybe too kind of hanging out on its own, so I'm gonna have to blend that together or something. Not really sure exactly what I need to do here, but gotta do something. Just got some white. Kind of fade this down here a little bit more. Now you might have noticed, I said before, I'm almost done with this. God knows how long it'll take before it's actually done. If I think I'm almost done, that probably means I'm not almost done. For all I know, there's another 20 hours I'm going to spend on this. I mean, I'm not going to do that. Do I really know I'm not going to do that? Just thinking, I've seen some people online, there's like a new trend where people go and get like kind of not super great paintings they find at garage sales and stuff, and they'll just paint an AT-AT in there, or like an X-Wing fighter crashing or something like that. I don't know if there's a name for that, but I've seen a few people doing it. It's kind of like becoming a movement, repurposed Star Wars art. You know? So this is still a little bit too kind of separated right here. Did that sound like Yoda just now? I wasn't really trying to. That wasn't very... I think the first one sounded more like Yoda. Well, this is like Yoda colors. This is like Lake Yoda. Alright. Let's still put in some more. So this is such a small area here for all this stuff that's happening. To go from that lighter to dark and then all the little detail bits. It kind of helps, or, well, it doesn't help anything. It makes it harder to just get it happening in a way that looks natural and even. This is a really green lake. Never seen a lake this green in real life, except for maybe on St. Patrick's Day. They dye it. I guess they don't do that for lakes. That's more like do it in Boston or the Hudson River or whatever. Maybe I'll sell this on St. Patrick's Day at some point. You never know when I'm going to sell things. I sold a painting, I guess earlier this year, that I did about 10 years ago. I wasn't really showing it anywhere. It's just kind of like on one or two websites just for sale. But it's nice when that happens. Okay, so I'm kind of thinking, I don't know if maybe I could add a little bit more white even to the part on the bottom here. That's supposed to be the most saturated of this part on the right. Yeah, maybe it is a little too close to the area on the left. I mean, that's sort of how it is in the reference. Or maybe the dark area is just too dark. There's like something else I have to do here. I'm not really sure what yet. I think, well, I'm going to just start tapping the white around here and there. I can tell my students sometimes, it's like being an artist is like being a detective. It's like you got to figure out what's wrong. Kind of get a lead sometimes. You just have to kind of follow it. Sometimes it doesn't pan out. You just end up wasting your time. But it's also really about being observant and paying attention. Not sure how much these changes I'm making right now will really show up on the camera, but these are very subtle, but it's just a little bit too separate over here from the top to the bottom. Carol, how's your painting going? Is it, you having a good time with it, or is it giving you a little trouble? You'll have to send me a picture when it's all done. So your painting has been in the same space, in the same place for all this time also? It's like our paintings are like twinsies. They're just growing together now. Oh, good. That's nice. I'm glad you're working on yours. Oh, I almost forgot. I got to finish that little area where the rock is going underneath the water here. Well, be doing that soon. Okay. So, okay, Carol, I'll be doing this. I'm thinking I'll be doing this every Saturday, so. Well, if you don't want to put the rocks in, you don't have to. It's up to you. It's like there's one little plant growing on the right side here. I didn't do the one on the left because I just didn't feel like it. So it's your painting. You can do whatever you want. You can have a gigantic rabbit sitting on top of the mountain if you feel like it. It's up to you. It'd be pretty cool if there's a gigantic rabbit that just hung out on mountains. I'd go see that. As long as he didn't want to eat me. I mean, they're vegetarian, so probably wouldn't. Of course, I'm vegan, so I'm made of plants. He might smell me and go, let me try that. Oh, thanks, Live Like You Mean It. Hearing a sound right now. It sounds a little bit like a tea kettle that's whistling. There's a good chance that's what that is. Okay, so I think I'm kind of right on the line of going too far with lightening the areas on the bottom. So I want to be careful not to overdo it, because then I'll just have to go back and redo everything I just did. All right, I think I'm going to bring the light area over a little bit right here, because I can see there's part I didn't paint in. That was my base color from before. I feel like that's too much light color now, so I'm going to just add in a little bit of sort of the swampy little plant color. Oh wow, my Tay is going vegan too. Well, you know what? It gets easier over time. How long have you been trying to eat vegan for? Because whenever I tell people I'm vegan, they usually, if they're not vegan, they usually say, "Oh, that must be really hard," but it's really not. It's just at first you're getting used to eating different things that you have been eating for a long time, probably. But I really don't miss very much of what I was eating before when I was still eating meat years ago. It's not always as convenient if you're with a bunch of friends and you go out to a restaurant or something, but there's usually at least something you could eat. Maybe an appetizer or something like that. Yeah. Sure, you just do a little bit at a time. When people get too extreme sometimes with changing their diet, a lot of the time that just doesn't work out so well, because it's like, unless you just really like it all of a sudden and it goes really well. If it's too much of a shock, sometimes it's just like too much to deal with. And people just give up altogether and go back to what they were doing before. Like exercise can be kind of like that. You just kind of overdo it too much. If you just start getting into it, and the other thing with that would be, of course, you can get an injury if you just do it too hard. If you don't enjoy it, then a lot of the time people aren't going to stick with it. It's another thing with diets that I think people try to do that doesn't work out so well. They just eat things that they think they have to eat that they don't like, and they're just kind of like sucking it up, and I mean literally, but just you know, eating things they don't want to eat, and they're just like not into it at all, and then it comes a point they just stop altogether and they go back to what they were doing before. So another thing with eating vegan, you don't have to eat bad food. Like, that's another thing people think, like, oh, you must eat like crap now. That's really noble. But if you're eating vegan food that doesn't taste good, it's just bad food. It's not like it has to be bad just because it's vegan. Okay, so I think I want to add a little more white back in over here, because now it's a little bit tough to see the edge of this reflection going on. Maybe also right here. So now, you know what? Back up. Yeah, it's definitely, I'm gonna need to add in a bunch more white, because up here is okay, but like down this way, it's just way too similar to what's happening over here to have that really bright look of the reflection. The value needs to be brighter overall, to the point where you can see it's clearly a reflection happening. It's supposed to look like it's kind of glowing, even though it's sort of dull. When I'm painting, I always have this little cap that I put on my drink there, just as an extra precaution. Not eat anything that's gonna kill me. Not that paint goes flying all over the place while I'm working, but you know, just a good idea. Some people say you should never eat or drink anything while you're painting, which is probably a good idea, but I mean, I'd be getting really dehydrated if I didn't drink something every once in a while I'm painting, because I'm often painting a lot. All right, so I'm gonna just add some more. This is just white here. And going along this edge, I want to really make it more distinct than it is right now. It's kind of almost blending into the area next to it. So got some lines here. You don't really see that, so you don't really see lines like individual little waves happening in that spot. So I got to break that up a little bit more. Can get lighter still though, definitely right there. You know, my take is something about eggs. I think Dr. Schultz has talked about this, is how there's buildings in like Italy and places in Europe that were built with nothing other than sand and eggs, and they're like hundreds or thousands of years old. They're still standing today. So you know, he's really big on how eggs are not really great for you. There's been this big conversation for decades about like, oh, the yolk is healthy. Eat the yolk. Don't eat the white part. And then it flips like a few years later. Oh, forget about the yolk. Forget about the yolk. Just eat the white part of the egg. And sometimes it's like, eat both of them. But really, I mean, I heard a story on NPR. It must be like 10 years ago now. Never heard about it anywhere else. So I don't know if maybe the research didn't really pan out with this. But there was a guest that was talking on one of the shows about how he had conclusive proof that eggs were causing heart attacks. There's a specific type of bacteria in the egg, and once you digest it, it gets into your intestines, and then from there it goes into your bloodstream, and then it goes to your heart. And if you eat enough of them, it will give you a heart attack. So it definitely would be interesting, considering a lot of people still have heart attacks, even though they're really healthy and active and you know, go jogging and stuff like that. You hear about them sometimes, they'll just still get a heart attack and die. So if it was coming from eggs, that would be really a shock to a lot of people. But like I said, never heard anything about it after that. I'd be interested to know what happened, you know, with that research or whatever. At the same time, we might not be hearing about it because there's nothing for anyone to really gain by telling you don't eat a thing. You know, it's like the egg industry itself might have killed that story somehow, or discredited the person that was talking about it. Who knows? It's a big industry to mess with. can definitely get egg replacer though for various things. Tofu scramble is not exactly the same, but you know, pretty close. Okay, so kind of keeping an eye on this kind of outline thing happening on the left here, where it's just looks too much like it's white right on the edge. So, go over this right here a little bit more. I'm just adding a really small amount of white here and there. Oh, is it $8 a dozen for eggs now? I don't even know. Is that a bad price? I don't know how much an egg costs. I don't know if I ever bought an egg in my life, now that I'm thinking about it. We'll say though, as far as animals go, like some people eat vegan, well, I mean, don't eat vegans, but people eat vegan food because it's like a health thing. Some people do it more for animals, but out of all the animals, kind of a toss-up between, you know, veal, calves, and it's calves, right? And the egg chickens, as far as who has it the worst, because the egg chickens are just shoved into a little cage, literally on top of each other in a pile, and they just are crapping all over each other, and it's like really an awful, miserable existence. Even the ones that say cage free, they may only let them out for like 5 minutes a day, and then they just get crammed back in a cage. So yeah. I don't want to turn this into vegan hour, but it's really unfortunate for the birds. Okay, so let's see how this looks from further away. I think I want to just put a little bit in down here, right on the edge. If it's going to get framed, it's probably going to get covered up anyway, so it's not the most important thing, but you never know if somebody might do a float frame where they just have the edge visible. So I'll just get rid of this one area right here a little bit. It's just a little light. I actually want to like bring this down some more. There's this one place where I can see there's some more plants that are visible, or maybe that's some shadow from the rocks right there. It's not really showing up enough right now. It's a little bit better. Just to give it more diversity there with how bright that part is. Okay, so I think I'm seeing one little place right in the middle here actually that's a little bit darker. I'm going to just go over that. I need it just slightly darker right there. Just kind of do a similar kind of thing where it stands out a little bit more. It's not really showing up as much though. I don't really want to mix a new color, but I guess that's okay. Just putting it on a little bit thicker now to have the darker color show up just slightly more. Over, I just added a little bit of white to it before, so I think I'm kind of going back the other way now. I think I'm actually going to get a darker green and mix it up just a little bit over here, because it's not really going as dark as I want. It's just almost there, but there is this little area right in that spot in the reference I can see that's noticeably darker compared to the majority of what's going on over there. So it's kind of like in that one little spot in the middle there. I'm going to get just a little bit of the green, gradient green. Oh, actually, I think I had a little tiny bit of the transparent yellow oxide, but not too much. So I just really need to get this darker now. Just something to bring down the value on the bottom. I'll do a little bit more brown. I keep saying brown, it's actually transparent yellow oxide, but it looks like brown. Okay, so that I think I'm almost there. Not quite dark enough maybe for what I want to do right here. It's showing up, but well, maybe it's okay. Almost thinking I want to switch brushes, but I don't think that's really the issue. It's just getting it to show up. Just kind of going over it just very lightly. It's showing up now. So there's this little area on the top where there's this break in the clouds. It's kind of like the blue sky is showing through. I think that's kind of what I'm seeing maybe right over here. I don't know if that's like, or maybe it's this shadow right here actually. That looks like it's probably more of the area that I'm seeing down here. So like that dark part right up there of the clouds seems to be kind of not giving much of a reflection right over here, so I'm seeing the plants show up darker in that spot, so it's not very obvious at all, but that looks like what's happening. So the trick with this is to do it in a way that looks like it's supposed to be there. Not sure if it's a little too abrupt right now. Putting in a few more places just to sort of make this look like it goes together more. Go over right here just slightly. There's this little kind of like ledge for the rock here. Well, I guess it's actually a plant. There's a ledge here and there for the rock, just kind of on the side. So there's something going on here that looks like it's continuing into the reflection area. Just slightly. See how this looks from over here. Okay, so I'm not following every single thing in the reference exactly where it is, but there's a couple places I see that I can adjust here a little bit more. I'm going to just go over this one part over here. I need to mix up a little bit more of this paint. Got to be careful not to go over it too much so that you don't see the reflection, but just naturally not as noticeable right there. All right, well, I think I want to just switch over now and just kind of work on that rock underneath right there and kind of come back to see if there's anything I want to do with this other part once I have that in, because that's going to help it look more like the whole scene is working when that part on the right for the rock is in there. It'll help with the appearance of the transparency of the water. So for that, I'm definitely going to need some more color to mix up that's darker. So, and seeing a little bit of a reflection right on there. And actually, if I really look now, I can see there's even this little plant that's up on the top of the rock is reflecting right underneath here. I don't think I'm going to really mess with that though. It's like I just noticed that for the first time. It's like you almost don't even see it at all. So see if it's going to be enough just with the Viridian and the transparent yellow oxide. That's very dark. So I'm not adding any of the cadmium yellow in there. I actually could lighten it a little bit with the white, because just with the reflection from the sky right there, it's not as dark as the shadow on the rock. So this is almost like a black here, just with two colors. They're not quite complementary, meaning on the opposite sides of the color wheel, but pretty close, I guess, to something like that. Sometimes you can get a black by mixing two colors, like there's one called quinacridone magenta, and you can mix that with another one called phthalo green. I think those two together will make basically what you have as a chromatic black. Both of them are chromophores though, so we're not really sure actually how long they last before fading, and it's being retested right now. But it is possible to do that sometimes with certain colors. And those are just opposite colors basically. Okay, so there's this one little triangle I'm going to do over here, sort of triangle-ish shape. I'm just going to wipe off my brush and then put in the dark color and just see how that looks. It's going to be too much, but Actually, it's not looking too bad. It's like kind of, I guess, mixing with something that's on the brush already, even though I just wiped it off. That's pretty close to where it should be now that I'm really looking at it. So the brush is always going to mix, you know, whatever's on the brush will mix with the new colors you get on there, unless you clean it really well. So in this case, it's looking, I think, pretty good. It's maybe even a little bit too light. So, trying to keep this edge nice and sharp where the waves are kind of running into this little dark area next to the rock. There's a little break kind of right around here. You see the darkness showing through kind of on a little area by itself. A little bit tough to see exactly what's going on right there in the photo. There is the reflection of the plant, but just kind of general looking, so you know what? Having second thoughts now. Maybe I should put that plant in there. I don't think it's going to really show up too well if I do, though. It's just kind of a blob. There is a place here where it's darker directly below the rock, so I'm going to try to put that in to give it that look of the light coming down here on the reflection on the right side. Of course, it's getting a little bit too defined right there on the left now. Could switch over and use a smaller brush, but using the bigger brush helps me to kind of keep it less specific and detailed. I'm trying to kind of like limit that. Now it's just this kind of dark block over here. So I have to bring it into this area a little bit better so it's not just kind of standing out too much against everything else. Get a little bit of the cadmium green to put in there, just on its own, to kind of give the appearance of that little weed that's hanging out on top of the rock. It's too far to the right. I need to make sure it's just like directly below the actual plant. A couple little ripples coming across here, so okay, I think that actually is working pretty good now. definitely very green right there. It's, you know, it shows up against the color of the shadow for the rocks. Definitely looks green, but it should because it's in the water. So let me just check that from back here. Okay, well, okay, I think I'm gonna maybe switch back now. Well, hold on a second. Okay, I'm gonna just lighten this just a little bit. I feel like it's maybe just slightly darker than I want it. It's kind of grabbing too much attention right now. So there's that fine line of just getting everything the right value and all that. And not going too far so it looks out of place. I guess that's all right. I'm actually going to put in a little line right here that I'm seeing, which I kind of like, right at the edge of this little wave or ripple. Actually seeing it looks like there's maybe a tiny little rock right over there on the right. I'm not going to bother with that, it's pretty small. Okay, so not a whole lot left to do here. I'm going to just go back to the white on this way and add a little bit more in there. Try not to go over these parts I went over before to make darker too much, but need to do something here to fix this up a little bit more. I think I'm almost there with this. I'm just not seeing a whole lot of other things left to adjust. You know, I think I want to actually just do this one place right over here. There's kind of a zigzag sort of happening. I don't know if that maybe would help what's going on down underneath there. Sometimes if you're looking at something and you're trying to fix it and you can't figure out what you need to do, sometimes it's the thing above that or below it that you need to actually work on. That's sort of framing everything else that you're looking at in that one area. I think that was a little bit not quite outlined enough before. Trying to avoid just having this edge be too outlined too. Then I'm gonna have to go back and reduce it. But you need something there. I think that's better. I'm gonna put one more little spike in here. One more thing I think I'm seeing up here that I want to add in also is there's a couple little places where the water breaks up right here. Slightly, there's just a little hint of a kind of ripple above there and over this way. Maybe one over here. I want to put this one a little closer together so that it looks like the ripples are not too large over that way. Well, of course, now all those little lines I just made are the exact same length, so I'm gonna make this one longer just to kind of give it more sort of a diverse look. I think that's definitely helping. Kind of make it look a lot more like a reflection right there. Another one. It's a little bit thicker than I wanted, but it's all right. Okay. Checking if there's anything else. Well, you know what? I think this new stuff I just did over here is maybe a little bit too light still. Which actually, that's kind of how it looks in the reference. It's one of those uneven places where the clouds maybe are brighter right there and then, you know, darker over to the right or whatever. But I think I do need to just do something right there to sort of make it not stand out quite as much. I'm gonna just tap it with just my brush here, just to kind of like wipe off a little bit basically. I'm not even really putting any paint on there. This brush is firm enough I can kind of like scrape it off, just like this. Okay. I think that might be it. sure. Like Mate, you were saying before, how do you know when it's done? I'm not sure yet, but no. I don't really see a whole lot left I could really do with it. I mean, I have the light on the top that's going down to the bottom. It's showing the places where there's the plants, but also the sand or whatever else that is that's down there. That's kind of like the different green. And, you know, I feel like it's bright enough that it looks like it's glowing from the reflection up above. So, I'm not sure if there's anything left to really do on it. I'm gonna go back even further over here. Yeah, you know what? I think that might be it. I think that's it. I think it's done. So that means there's nothing left to paint. So thank you. I guess I'm all finished for today, so thanks for stopping by. And this painting will be for sale, so if you're interested, just feel free to contact me. And if you guys haven't, you know, followed, please follow, like, all that kind of stuff. And let me just check over here real quick. All right. Never actually rated anybody before, but I don't actually even know how to do that. If you don't know what that is, you don't need to know. But I'll be back again next week, same time, 3 o'clock Eastern, and not sure what I'll be painting, but if you want to get on my reminders list for when I'm going to be painting again, you can just send me an email. I've got my email at the bottom of the screen there. Actually, not my email, but my website. You can write to me there, or just follow me in one of the other places, and you know, just send me a direct message or whatever. But I'll figure out what I'm going to paint, and I'll be, I think, posting about it soon. So until next time, that's all for now.